Let's make something very clear. No one has the right to shake your peace. No one earns that kind of access unless you hand it to them. When someone tries to hurt you with words, silence, betrayal, or games, what they're really doing is revealing themselves. They want to control your emotions. They want a reaction. They want to feel important. Don't give it to them. You're not here to entertain weakness. You're here to master your state. People will project. People will insult. People will test you. But listen closely. You're not their emotional trash can. If their words sting, pause. Don't react. Observe. Let it burn quietly and then ask yourself, is this a reflection of me or a mirror of their own pain? The strongest people in the world aren't the loudest in the room. They're the ones who look at chaos, smile internally, and stay calm, focused, and untouched. You see, control isn't loud. Control is silent, strategic, stoic, focused. They might try to provoke you, but when you're trained, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you stop being a target because you're no longer reactive. You're not controlled by approval or fear or ego. You control the temperature of your space. They don't get to change your weather. They'll say something slick. You pause. You breathe. You stand. That's power. They'll disappear to manipulate you. You keep moving like they never existed. That's dominance. Your worth is non-negotiable. Your peace is not up for grabs. And your attention? That's earned, not given. When someone tries to shake you, remember, the moment you react emotionally, they win. But the moment you choose to remain unbothered, they lose control. That's how you win. Every time, let them talk. Let them try. Let them watch you rise in silence. Because the truth is this, power isn't loud. Power isn't petty. Power is calm, disciplined, and utterly unbothered. Now stand in it. And never explain yourself again. Detach emotion from insult. They said something cruel. They wanted a reaction. But here's the truth. Just because it was said doesn't mean it deserves your energy. You were not born to internalize other people's insecurities. When someone throws an insult, it's rarely about you. It's a projection, a reflection of their own chaos, their own lack of self-worth, their own fear of being insignificant. They want to provoke you, not to defeat you, but to pull you down to their emotional level. Because if you stay calm while they rage, it reminds them of how small they actually are. And that burns them more than any insult ever could. But this is where most people get it wrong. They react, they shout back, they explain, they defend. They let the insult enter their body like poison, and the moment you allow that, you lose your edge. So what do? You detach. Not coldly, not arrogantly, but strategically. You see, emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you've trained yourself not to let those feelings control your behavior. It means you've risen to a place where people can't yank your strings like a puppet. You've learned to hold space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you own your power. That's real strength. Let them call you names. Let them try to make you feel less than. Smile if you want, or don't. But do not explain, do not correct. Do not bleed just to prove you're human. Because the moment you try to prove yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, you've already given away your dignity. And dignity is not something you ever hand over. People will say things to test you, to undermine your confidence, to get under your skin. But hear this, not every opinion deserves your acknowledgement. Not every voice needs to be answered. And not every insult needs to land, because you have the ultimate weapon, emotional discipline. You don't flinch when someone tries to hurt you. You don't shrink when they try to belittle you. You stay centered, calm, focused. Because when your mind is clear and your heart is anchored, you become untouchable. Here's what they won't tell you. When you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And when you're unpredictable, you're powerful. The people who once used words to hurt you, they lose their grip. Because your silence says what your words never could. I know who I am. And I don't need your validation. That silence, that unshaken look in your eye, that subtle smirk when someone tries to get a rise out of you and fails, that's not indifference. That's intelligence. That's emotional mastery. That's strength built from experience, from heartbreak, from disappointment, and turned into armor. You don't show that you're above it. You are above it. You've outgrown the need to prove your worth to people who couldn't see it in the first place. You've stopped arguing with those who are only interested in tearing you down. And you've made a decision, a strong, quiet, final decision, to choose peace over drama, focus over reaction, silence over noise. That decision will cost you some fights. Good. Let them go. That decision will cost you some people. Even better, watch them walk. Because your job is not to entertain every insult thrown your way. Your job is to protect your peace, keep your mind sharp, and move with clarity. And when you do that, you start walking through life differently. You enter rooms without explaining yourself. You face critics without shrinking. You speak when you choose, not when you're baited. Because you no longer react from emotion, you respond from power. The next time someone tries to insult you, pause. Feel the energy, but don't act on it. Remember who you are, not who they try to make you become. Look them in the eye, and if you must say anything, say this: you don't have that kind of power over me. And mean it, because once you learn to detach your emotions from other people's weakness, you step into a version of yourself that is fearless, unshaken, untouchable. And that version is who you were meant to be all along. Train your nervous system the moment you feel your heart race, your hands clench, your voice start to shake. That's when it begins. That's when the real test starts. Not outside, but inside you. Because when people try to push your buttons, it's not about what they said. It's about how your body responds. It's about how well you've trained your system to stay calm in the middle of a storm. You don't win in life by being the loudest, the fastest, or even the smartest. You win by mastering the one thing most people ignore: your nervous system. Most people live in reaction mode. Something happens and they explode. They get insulted and they raise their voice. Someone rejects them and their stomach turns. One disrespectful comment and their entire state collapses. That's not control. That's slavery to your impulses. But here's the truth that separates the weak from the strong. You are only as powerful as your ability to remain calm under pressure. You can't fake composure. You can't pretend to be centered. Because your body always tells the truth. When your breath is shallow, when your chest tightens, when your eyes dart and your muscles lock up, you're signaling to the world that you've lost control. Even if you don't speak a word, your body reveals whether you're reacting or responding. But the good news? This can be trained, mastered, controlled. And when you do that, when you rewire your nervous system to stay grounded, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Because now, no one can hijack your peace. No one can control your state. No one can provoke you unless you allow it. This isn't about pretending things don't affect you. It's about deciding who and what gets to touch your emotions. When someone tries to humiliate you, most people either break down or strike back. But you train for that moment. You breathe deeper. You slow your body. You anchor your attention on what matters, not what's loud. You are not your heartbeat. You are not your fear. You are the awareness that observes all of it and chooses what happens next. The most powerful people don't avoid stress. They face it on their own terms. They expose themselves to discomfort, not to suffer, but to expand their threshold. Because once you've sat with your own discomfort, once you've breathed through the pain, once you've remained composed in a moment that once would have shattered you, you become a different creature. You become unshakable. People don't respect emotional chaos. They respect the one who walks into chaos unbothered, calm eyes, slow voice, grounded energy. That's not born, that's built. And the building starts in the little moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you choose not to scream. When someone raises their voice and you lower yours. When fear rises in your chest and instead of running, you stay with it, breathing through it like a warrior who's been here before. Because you have. You train your nervous system by exposing it, observing it, and commanding it. Not with force, but with presence. Do you know what happens when you stop fearing your own reactions? People lose their power over you because they realize you're not someone they can shake. You're not going to argue like they hoped. You're not going to flinch like they expected. You're not going to unravel when they try to poke holes in your composure. You've trained for this. You've bled in silence so you could stand in strength. And if you haven't trained yet, start now. Not when it's convenient, but when it's uncomfortable, especially when you feel like reacting. That's the rep. That's the workout. That's the moment you grow stronger than your impulses. Close your eyes, take one long breath, feel the sensation without judgment, and instead of suppressing it, command it. You'll notice something remarkable. Your brain will follow your body. You can either live in survival mode, letting life happen to you, or you can start building the kind of discipline that makes you immune to chaos. Not because chaos stops happening, but because you've stopped being controlled by it. And that kind of discipline, it turns you into someone who walks into fire with ice in their veins. That's how power is built, not in noise, not in reaction, but in silence. In how calm you can remain when everything around you wants to pull you apart. This is your training ground, and your nervous system is your battlefield. But once you master it, Nothing outside of you will ever control you again. Don't personalize weakness. The moment someone disrespects you, lies to you, or betrays your trust, your mind starts asking the wrong question: what did I do wrong? Stop. Right there. That's the trap. Because their weakness, it's not about you. It never was. We are trained by pain to believe that when someone mistreats us, it's a reflection of our own value. That if they cheat, we must not have been enough. If they insult us, maybe we deserved it. If they left, perhaps we were unworthy. But the truth, what people do to you says nothing about who you are and everything about who they are. When someone lies to you, they're revealing their own fear of truth. When they disrespect you, they're showing their lack of self-respect. When they try to make you feel small, it's because they already feel invisible. Weakness wears many masks. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it sounds like sarcasm. Sometimes it hides in silence or fake smiles. But no matter how it presents itself, it is always a reflection of them, not a judgment of you. So why do we personalize it? Why do we internalize other people's brokenness like it's a mirror? Because our ego wants to make sense of the pain, and the easiest way to do that is to blame ourselves. That ends now. You are not the cause of their lack of emotional maturity. You are not the reason they couldn't love deeply. You are not the trigger for their cruelty, silence, avoidance, or games. They came with those flaws. They made those choices. They carry those wounds. And while they may have thrown it all at you, you are not the one who created it. You must learn to observe behavior without making it personal. When someone tries to wound you with words, don't absorb it. Step back and analyze it like data. Is this a projection? Is this manipulation? Is this fear disguised as control? Ask the real questions. Not why did they do this to me, but why are they so afraid they need to do this at all? That shift in focus changes everything. It frees you from their emotional grip. It turns confusion into clarity. It replaces guilt with understanding. And understanding is power. You don't have to match their weakness with weakness. You don't need to retaliate. You don't need to defend. You only need to see it clearly and rise above it. Because when you stop taking things personally, you stop being a victim of other people's storms. You become the eye of the storm, calm, still, untouched. And guess what happens when you do that? You disarm them. You frustrate them. You reveal their lack of control over you. That's the moment their power over you breaks. They wanted you reactive. They wanted you wounded. They wanted your identity to bend under their dysfunction. But instead, you stood still. You looked them in the eyes with peace, not pain. And in that moment, you became untouchable, not because you didn't feel it, but because you chose not to carry it. You're not here to fix people. You're not here to make their demons feel safe. You're not here to water down your light so their insecurity doesn't flare. You're here to walk in your truth, stand in your worth, and guard your peace. And anyone who throws chaos your way in response is showing you they're not ready for someone like you. Let them go. If someone's weakness triggers you, check your boundaries. If someone's insecurity affects your self-image, check your healing. If someone's disrespect makes you question your value, check your narrative. But never again make it about you. They shouted because they have no control over their emotions. They ghosted because they fear confrontation. They lied because they live in shame. They insulted you because they feel inadequate. And none of that is your fault. None of it belongs to you. You are not what they did to you. You are what you decided to become after it. You are the strength they underestimated. You are the clarity they never had. You are the peace they tried to break but couldn't reach. So the next time someone tries to hurt you, remember, you are not the problem. You are just the mirror that made them face theirs. And that reflection was never yours to carry. Master the art of the pause. When someone throws a verbal punch, what you do next determines everything. Do you react or do you pause? Most people respond like machines, wired to explode, defend, or chase validation. But if you want real power, not surface level, not temporary, but permanent, undeniable control over your life, you need to master one thing: the pause. That split second of silence is not weakness, it's warfare, it's discipline. It's what separates those who own the room from those who get emotionally dragged through it. Because here's the truth. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to react to everyone. Your pause is your filter. It's where emotion meets intelligence. It's where your future is protected. Someone says something disrespectful. They're fishing for a reaction. They want your energy, your anger, your validation, your time. They want control. But when you pause, when you stay silent for just a moment longer than they expect, you break the pattern. You send a message stronger than words ever could. You don't have that kind of power over me. And make no mistake, this isn't about being passive. It's about being precise. It's about understanding that silence is not absence, it's presence, amplified. A pause can stop a fight, shut down manipulation, and expose the truth without you saying a single word. That's how sharp it is. But most people don't pause, they react. They let adrenaline speak for them. They defend, they argue, they explain, hoping to be understood by someone who already decided not to listen. Why waste your breath? You pause because it puts you back in command. You pause because emotions are weapons, and if you're not careful, you'll use them against yourself. You pause because when you slow down your response, you see things clearly. You stop looking at the noise and start reading the intention. Are they trying to get under your skin? Are they projecting their own pain? Are they trying to bait you into a drama they secretly enjoy? A pause reveals the game. And when you see the game, you stop being the pawn. That's why the pause is feared by manipulators, narcissists, and energy thieves. Because they rely on your reaction to validate their behavior. They rely on your rage to justify their disrespect. They rely on you losing your cool so they can stay in control. But when you pause, they lose the script. They stumble. They reveal themselves. There's a quiet kind of dominance in holding your tongue, in not moving when you're being pushed, in sitting still when the world demands a performance. That's not submission. That's power choosing its moment. It's strategic silence. It's emotional armor. It's how warriors speak without shouting. You don't need to respond just because someone expects you to. You don't owe anyone an instant reply. You are allowed to take a breath, gather your composure, and respond from strength, not impulse. Because when you pause, you're no longer being controlled by emotion. You're guiding it. You're not throwing words like wild punches. You're aiming them with precision. And sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. People underestimate the impact of quiet control. They think power is in the volume, the aggression, the reaction. But true power is in restraint, in knowing exactly when to speak and when silence says more. A pause can do what shouting never will. It can make people uncomfortable. It can make them think. It can make them realize they don't own your attention, your energy, or your self-respect. Because every time you pause instead of react, you're reminding yourself of this. You are not their puppet. You are your own master. So let them talk, let them test, let them wait. You owe no one immediate access to your inner world. You owe no one the privilege of watching you unravel. If they want chaos, give them calm. If they want fire, give them ice. If they want dominance, give them silence. Let your pause be a mirror. Let them see themselves in it and deal with the reflection. Because the most powerful people you'll ever meet, they don't scream for attention, they pause, they assess, and they act, not to react, but to command. Train yourself in the pause. Use it like a weapon. Honor it like a shield. And protect your peace at all costs. Because in that quiet second before the words come out, you either give away your power or you rise into it. Define your worth internally. The moment you allow someone else to decide your value, you become a prisoner to their opinion. You walk into a room and scan faces, wondering what they think of you. You dress a certain way, speak a certain way, shrink yourself, please them, overextend yourself just to feel enough. You chase compliments, you crave validation, and you suffer in silence when it doesn't come. That's not confidence, that's captivity. And you'll never be free until you define your worth internally. Because the truth is, people will praise you one day and ignore you the next. They'll love you when it's easy and question you when you choose yourself. They'll celebrate your light and then resent you for not dimming it. So if you base your self-worth on how they treat you, you'll live on a roller coaster you can't control. Your power begins the moment you stop looking outward for something that was always supposed to come from within. You don't need permission to feel whole. You don't need a cheerleader to believe in your own strength. You don't need applause to stand tall in your identity. You are not valuable because someone chooses you. You are valuable because you exist, because you fought battles no one saw, because you've rebuilt yourself more times than you can count. Because you kept going when you had every reason to give up. That's your proof. That's your resume. That's your worth. You don't need it stamped by anyone else. And yet, we've been conditioned to forget this. From childhood, we're taught to measure ourselves against others. Grades, likes, looks, social circles, job titles, relationship status. We're trained to see ourselves through their lens. And the moment we feel unseen, we assume we're unworthy. But hear this loud and clear. You are not who people say you are. You are who you decide you are. You decide how you carry yourself. You decide what energy you allow in your space. You decide how much access others get to your peace. And you only give that access when you understand that your value is not up for debate. Some people won't see your worth, not because it isn't there, but because they lack the capacity to recognize it. Don't let their blindness become your identity. It's not your job to be more lovable. It's not your job to prove you matter. It's not your job to shrink so others feel secure. It's your job to stay rooted in your truth, even when others try to uproot it. It's your job to build confidence that isn't built on compliments. It's your job to walk into every room like your value came with you, and not like you're waiting for it to be handed out. Because when you define your worth internally, everything changes. You stop begging. You stop performing. You stop settling. You speak with clarity. You move with purpose. You cut off energy that doesn't align with your standards, not because you're arrogant, but because you're aligned. And let's be clear. This doesn't mean you don't listen to feedback or grow from it. It means your core identity isn't dependent on whether someone likes you or not. It means you can walk away from people who don't treat you right without over-explaining, over-apologizing, or overthinking. It means you stop asking, why wasn't I enough for them? And start asking, why did I allow someone who couldn't see my value to sit at my table? The more you define yourself from within, the less they can shake you from the outside. That's the real flex. That's the untouchable energy. It doesn't come from followers. It doesn't come from approval. It comes from knowing exactly who you are, even when no one is clapping. So, take a breath. Step back from the noise. Turn your attention inward. Ask yourself, who am I when I stop seeking permission? Who am I when I stop chasing people who can't even see me? Who am I when I stop settling for crumbs and start honoring the full meal I bring to the table? You'll find something powerful in that stillness. You'll find you. And when you build your identity on that foundation, solid, internal, unshakable, no one can take it from you because your worth is not in their hands. It never was. Respond with precision, not emotion. When someone pushes you, the first impulse is to push back. When someone insults you, the fire rises, your hands clench, your jaw tightens, your voice sharpens, your nervous system screams, say something, hit back. But that's the moment you must stop and choose power over impulse. Because real power is not about reacting, it's about responding. And not just responding, but responding with precision, not emotion. Emotion makes you sloppy. Precision makes you dangerous. You can't lead yourself, protect your peace, or win the moment if you're emotionally hijacked. And that's exactly what they want. When someone provokes you, they're not just testing your patience. They're trying to steal your clarity, to bait you into a reaction that proves them right, that feeds their ego, that confirms their manipulation worked. But when you respond with precision, you don't play their game. You rewrite the rules. Emotion reacts. Precision reads the room, studies the angle, finds the weak point, and delivers a message that hits 10 times harder, with 10 times less effort. Think of the most respected people you know, the ones who command space, who never seem rattled, who speak when they want, not when they're triggered. What do they all have in common? They've trained themselves to think before they speak, to measure their words, to conserve their energy, and to never hand over control just because someone tried to get a rise out of them. Precision isn't about being cold. It's about being controlled. It's calculated strength, strategic stillness, intentional impact. When someone disrespects you, emotion says, let me teach them a lesson. But precision says, let me make sure they never try that again. Emotion makes you loud. Precision makes you memorable. And sometimes, the most powerful response is subtle, direct. One sentence that cuts through the noise and lands like a sword. Not because you yelled, but because you knew exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. That's how power works. You don't get respect by over-explaining. You don't win by out-shouting. You don't reclaim dignity by losing control. You win by being so composed, so grounded, so surgically aware of your response that the other person feels exposed just by standing in your presence. But you only get there through discipline. Discipline of thought, discipline of emotion, discipline of language, because your words are weapons. And if you swing them blindly in rage, you miss your target, or worse, hit yourself. People will try to trigger you, not always out of malice, but often out of fear, insecurity, jealousy, or immaturity. They want your energy. They want to feel significant by watching you react. But when you respond with emotion, you hand them the trophy. Don't hand it over so easily. You must learn to sit in the discomfort of silence, to hear the insult, to feel the heat, and instead of combusting, analyze. What is their goal? Or what is their weakness? What truth can I deliver that leaves no room for rebuttal? And sometimes the answer is no words at all, because silence itself, when used with intent, is sharper than any comeback. Emotion wants to destroy. Precision wants to dominate. One is impulsive, the other is exact. And if you want to own your space, walk with power, and keep your peace intact, you can't let every comment, every glance, every tone drag you into emotional chaos. You must elevate. Emotion is natural, but mastery comes from not being enslaved by it. Let it rise, let it pass, but don't act until you're clear, because that clarity, that's your weapon. Your mind is sharpest when it's calm, your voice hits hardest when it's steady, and your presence becomes unforgettable when it's composed under fire. Anyone can scream when they're angry, but not everyone can deliver one sentence that silences a room. That's the level you train for. Precision doesn't just end conflict, it ends confusion. It draws the line. It commands respect. It protects your energy. And most of all, it keeps you aligned with your standards, not theirs. So when the next moment comes, and it will, when someone tries to provoke, insult, or control your reaction, remember this: you don't owe them your emotions. You owe yourself your discipline. You owe yourself your clarity. You owe yourself your power, preserved, focused, and unshaken. Respond with precision, not emotion, and they'll never forget you. You don't need to shrink for people to feel comfortable. You don't need to dim your light to avoid making others feel insecure. You don't need to explain your confidence, your silence, your ambition, or your peace. You are allowed to walk into every room like you belong there, even if it unsettles people who never imagined you could. Own your presence, without apology, without hesitation, without shrinking. Because the moment you start apologizing for who you are, you start erasing the very power that makes you unforgettable. You were not born to play small. You weren't created to be tolerated. You were meant to be respected. And respect begins when you stop asking for permission to exist in your full strength. Too many people walk around waiting for someone to validate them, waiting for someone to say, yes, you're enough now, waiting for someone to give them a seat at the table. But power doesn't wait. Power doesn't ask. Power doesn't knock. It walks in. It takes its space. It speaks when it's ready, and it's never sorry for being exactly what it is, and neither should you be. There will always be people who feel uncomfortable when you rise, not because you're wrong, but because you remind them of everything they're still afraid to become. Your presence exposes their insecurity. Your strength threatens their comfort zone. Your clarity makes their confusion unbearable. That is not your burden to carry. You're not here to dim your power so someone else can feel better about hiding theirs. You're not here to dilute your confidence just so no one calls it arrogance. You're not here to soften your voice so others don't feel small in your presence. You're here to take up space, fully, boldly, quietly, loudly, authentically, without apology. It doesn't matter how they label it. Too much, too intense, too quiet, too ambitious, too different. What matters is that you don't let those labels become your limits, because the minute you apologize for being you, you start negotiating your worth. And your worth is not up for negotiation. They didn't see your pain. They didn't feel your sacrifices. They didn't carry what you carried. They didn't build what you built. So they don't get to tell you how bright you're allowed to shine now. Own your walk. Own your silence. Own your eye contact, your boundaries, your focus, your joy, your sadness, your standards. Own it all. And when people try to minimize you through sarcasm, through exclusion, through side comments and quiet resistance, don't flinch. Let them feel it. Let them wrestle with it. Let them be challenged by the presence of someone who didn't come to impress, but came to stand firm. The world teaches us to make ourselves smaller. Smile more. Don't speak up too much. Don't make others uncomfortable. Don't show how capable you really are. Don't be too confident. Don't demand too much, but here's the truth. When you shrink, no one is actually more comfortable. They're just more powerful, and you weren't made to live under anyone's thumb. You were made to walk in rooms with your head high, not because you think you're better, but because you know you're worthy. You were made to speak with clarity, not because you want attention, but because you refuse to be misunderstood. You were made to move with purpose, not because you want to prove something, but because you have nothing left to prove. You owe no one an apology for being who you are. You owe no one an apology for not being who they wanted you to be. You owe no one an explanation for why you will no longer play small to protect their comfort zone. So the next time you feel yourself holding back, editing your truth, or softening your light, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it serves me or because I'm afraid they won't accept me? If it's fear, choose power instead, because you weren't built to be accepted. You were built to be undeniable. There's a difference. And the people who matter, they'll feel it. They'll respect it. And if they don't, let them go. You didn't come this far to start apologizing for who you are. So stand up, speak clearly, move boldly, breathe deeply, and exist like your presence is not a mistake, because it isn't. It's a message, a mirror, a force, a reminder that strength doesn't need permission. Own it without apology and never look back. So let them talk. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand, underestimate, or try to box you in. Because none of it changes the truth. You are no longer available for disrespect, drama, or distraction. You have trained yourself to detach from insult. You've mastered the pause. You've stopped reacting. You no longer seek their validation to know your worth. You've built calm in the fire, discipline in the chaos, and clarity in the noise. And now, you walk differently. You speak less, but your presence speaks more. You're not loud. You're precise. You're not reactive. You're intentional. You're not looking for approval. You've become your own source of it. So from this point forward, carry yourself like someone who has nothing to prove, only something to protect.